700. Well, welcome, folks, to this edition of the 700 Club. Have you noticed this business about lockdown? The economy is locked down. States are locked down. You can't go out after 10 o'clock at night. You can't eat with more than 4 or 5 people. You can't go to sporting events. They can't have any audience in the stands. Why? Because of COVID. Well, what is it this lockdown does? I was reading a report on Hillsdale College that's very excellent. This publication called Imprimis. And Jay Bhattacharya is a professor of medicine at Stanford University. He has an MD and PhD in economics. He's has had a distinguished career, and they have together with them, look at this. I mean, they have a group of people that have come together, about 35,000 distinguished citizens who said, listen, this lockdown is killing people. Now, here are the statistics that will shock you. You want to get shocked? Only about 0.04% of people with COVID die from it. The death rate is minuscule. As a matter of fact, more people die from influenza than die from COVID, all right? But here's what has happened by these lockdowns. An estimated 130 million additional people will starve to death this year because of the economic damage resulting from these lockdowns. People have stopped getting their children immunizations against diseases like diphtheria, whooping cough, and polio because that's been led to fear of COVID. They feared more than those deadly diseases. 80 million, get this, 80 million children worldwide are now at risk of these diseases. And many Americans with cancer needed chemotherapy don't come in for treatment because they were more afraid of COVID. It is insanity. And what's happened is this particular report said children should get out and pray. As a matter of fact, they found that 40% of young people were considering suicide. Why? Because they can't play, they can't go to sports. There is no reason in this world that people can't go out and enjoy football or soccer or whatever game they're interested in, baseball, and why we have to shut these venues down to a few thousand people when the stands would hold 70,000. It isn't necessary. Now, the elderly, the vulnerable, people in nursing homes, they should be locked down. But the kids ought to go back to school. We cannot stop children from going to school or from playing. But this is what's happening when the bureaucrats take over. And I think in California they're having a tremendous kickback, but the whole idea of a lockdown is insanity. So I just give you that. And
do you think people are adhering to this, if you want to call it that, because they're afraid of the repercussions if they don't? I mean, when a government or a government official creates a lockdown scenario, I think people are afraid of being arrested.
Well, of course they are.
I mean, what do they do?
But think what happens. Your little restaurant is closed up, okay, so you don't buy vegetables. So what happens to the poor farmer? He can't work. Those laborers are out of work. They can't harvest the vegetables, so they waste the vegetables, and it goes all the way through the chain, and people are suffering all over. When what we ought to do is take the vulnerable, those in nursing homes, the extremely elderly, those that have had some kind of a debilitating condition, and put them in some kind of quarantine. Let the kids go to school. Let them play sports. Let them get out. And then before long, we've got what you call a herd immunity. And, you know, we don't have that big a threat. But this lockdown is bureaucratic, insensitive. It's just insanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do think that, you know, many people are doing what you're saying. They're using their common sense. If they have underlying conditions, they aren't out and about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but for example, you say you shop at a big box store, it's okay. You go to a little store, a little grocery store, and it's not. You can go into a big restaurant, you can handle the vegetables, you can't do it in a little store. I mean, the whole thing is just insanity because it's not being based on science, it's being based on political correctness. And I understand in terms of the schools in New York, it has to do with the teachers union. They have set a goal when they're over 3% of the people have got this COVID, then we're going to shut the schools down. If it's 2.5%, they will open them. I mean, that again, insanity. Whew. Well, that's my little opening remarks to scare you or maybe make you mad and tell you that bureaucrats, we could not run the country by these bureaucrats. Well, there's a flurry of activity at the White House this week with President Trump predicting, quote, big things over the next couple of days. The main question, will the Supreme Court hear an appeal challenging Pennsylvania's mail-in voter law? And that's not all. CBN's Washington reporter Jenna Browder has more.
President Trump is promising a big week ahead as his legal team continues to mount challenges in states where the race was close. But so far, more setbacks than successes. The Pennsylvania case challenges a law passed by the legislature that allows mail-in voting, the plaintiff arguing that it takes an amendment of the Constitution. If the High Court hears the case and agrees, it could invalidate most of Pennsylvania's mail-in votes. Senator Ted Cruz, who has won cases in the Supreme Court, told Fox News' Sean Hannity he would argue the case.
In Pennsylvania, the problem was made worse because the Pennsylvania Supreme Court is a partisan Democratic court that has issued multiple decisions that were just on their face contrary to law. And that's not how elections are supposed to work.
Meanwhile, at the White House, the president predicted even more activity this week.
But you'll see a lot of big things happening over the next couple of days.
CBN chief political analyst David Brody spelled it out on CBN's Faith Nation.
The U.S. Supreme Court could get involved in the Pennsylvania case. And then you've got Michigan, what's going on in Michigan with Antrim County and those the forensic audit of the Dominion voting system machines. We're going to hear more about that in the next day or two. And then Wisconsin, there is a case before the U.S. or the Wisconsin Supreme Court. So lots going on.
And Arizona's High Court has agreed to review an appeal based on the state Republican Party's challenge to the state certification of votes. But so far, legal challenges on behalf of the president haven't met much success. On Monday, suits filed by Sidney Powell, a former member of Trump's legal team, were thrown out in Michigan and Georgia. The suits claimed rigged voting machines switched massive amounts of votes from Trump to Biden.
Sidney Powell made their debut in Georgia court. Her case has been thrown out from the bench by the judge. He didn't even take the time to consider it. Her case was so bad, the federal judge literally threw it out of court from the bench.
Despite the president's calls for the governor to intervene, Georgia's Secretary of State recertified the vote that gave Biden the state by nearly 12,000 ballots.
We have now counted legally cast ballots 3 times, and the results remain unchanged.
Today is the deadline for states to ratify their electors to qualify for safe harbor status. That means Congress must accept the slate of electors that have resolved their disputes. At the end of the day, though, the Supreme Court could be the wild card in this election. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Well, in other news, Joe Biden continues to put together his potential cabinet. And one candidate has conservatives up in arms. John Jessup has more from Washington.
That's right, Pat. Biden is considering naming retired 4-star Army General Lloyd Austin as Secretary of Defense, but it's his pick to head the Department of Health and Human Services that has conservatives sounding the alarm. As California's Attorney General, Xavier Becerra has tried to require pro-life pregnancy centers to post advertisements for abortion and to force religious groups to pay for contraceptives. The Supreme Court ruled against those policies. The Reverend Albert Mohler, president of Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, said Becerra is a threat to freedom of religion. In his daily podcast, The Briefing, Mohler said, quote, "It would be hard to create, even in imagination, a nominee for this kind of position who would be of deeper concern for anyone who is pro-life, pro-marriage, or pro-religious liberty than Xavier Becerra." If the GOP holds the Senate, Becerra's confirmation is expected to face strong opposition. Well, Biden's would-be foreign policy team would likely mark a profound change in its approach to a potentially explosive Middle East. CBN's Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
Sunday marked the 3rd anniversary of President Trump's recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital. To celebrate, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu put Trump's declaration alongside President Harry Truman's recognition of the newly born State of Israel in 1948.
These two historic proclamations will never be forgotten. They'll never be forgotten by the Jewish people and by the Jewish state. They will be cherished for generations.
However, there are concerns that some of the advances made by the Trump administration could be changed or even reversed. So far, Joe Biden has indicated he would likely keep the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem if he becomes president. But what about other Trump policies in the Middle East? Michael Oren is Israel's former ambassador to the U.S.
With respect to Iran, both the former vice president and his running mate, Senator Harris, have said unequivocally that they intend to renew the Iran nuclear deal of 2015. If Iran returns to the levels of uranium enrichment established by that deal, it's not very difficult for Iran to do, and that means lifting sanctions, and that has profound ramifications for Israel in the Middle East.
Netanyahu also noted other positive moves made by Trump on Israel's behalf.
You recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. You recognize Israel's legitimate rights in Judea and Samaria. You proposed a realistic peace plan that acknowledges those rights and maintains Israel's ability to defend itself. You forged the historic Abraham Accords.
Oren believes a Biden administration would not invest in those accords the way the Trump administration has.
I don't think they're going to invest money, for example, in building the Israeli-Sudanese peace, because that belongs to the Trump era. And again, the emphasis will be on the Palestinian issue and not on the Abraham Accords.
On the Palestinian front, Senator Harris has embraced a return to negotiations with the Palestinians and stated, "We are committed to a two-state solution, and we will oppose any unilateral steps that undermine that goal." That signals opposition to building in the Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, and restoring funding to the Palestinian Authority. From Tehran to the West Bank, it's clear a Biden-Harris administration would set a dramatically different course than what President Trump has for the past 4 years for Israel and the Middle East. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, Chris joins us now from Jerusalem. Chris, it looks like those Palestinians were blocking any deal. There was no way in the world you could make a deal. And even the best things, I remember Yasser Arafat in the old days, he opposed everything. And how in the world, I mean, the reason we got the Abraham Accords is because they totally bypassed those Palestinians and made a deal with the Arabs. Well, how is the current uncertainty and power vacuum in the U.S. affecting Israel and affecting the Middle East?
Well, to your point, Pat, you know, you met one time with Yasser Arafat, and they were very intransigent then. They still are now under Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. In fact, I was talking to an expert earlier today about the Palestinians. He said that PA officials have been in touch with the Biden administration, and what they say they want to do or help to do would restore funding to the Palestinian Authority, restore funding to UNRWA, and also see what they can do to restart the negotiations with Israel. But as you say about the vacuum right now, I think, Pat, everyone right now is recalculating and watching and waiting this transition period, this vacuum. That would be Iran, Saudi Arabia, the Palestinian Authority. Yesterday, I asked Danny Danon, he's Israel's former ambassador to the UN, about this period, this vacuum. He said Iran's trying to take advantage of this period, but said that Israel will do whatever is necessary to prevent Iran from getting nuclear capabilities. He said he couldn't be any more clear than that. And they're keeping a watchful eye on Iran, especially now, Pat, after the assassination of Iran's top nuclear scientist about 10 days ago. And by the way, the other thing that people are calculating is I was in Ariel, that's in Samaria, Israel's biblical heartland, a few days ago, and they're building around the clock in case Biden comes in, becomes president, and he wants to stop building in Israel's biblical heartland.
Well, you know, that UNRWA was so incredible. They kept those Palestinians in bondage, and the United Nations year after year after year saying you have a right to return and we'll give you back the land that you abandoned in 1948. It was insane what they were doing.
Exactly, and they were paying UNRWA millions of dollars, and they defunded UNRWA right now. And another thing, Pat, you know, generations of Palestinian children, we've documented this. We've had kids on camera saying, you know, I want to return to my homeland. I want to drive the Jews into the sea. So what this funding was doing was actually training, indoctrinating a generation of Palestinian students, whether here in Jerusalem, the West Bank, or Gaza, that they want to eliminate the state of Israel. And that's exactly what U.S. taxpayer funds were doing until the Trump administration stopped that. And I would add, Pat, you know, for the last 4 years, really the Trump administration has changed the whole paradigm here. From Iran, they had maximum pressure on Iran. They got out of the nuclear deal. The Palestinians, as they say, they defunded the Palestinians, and also the Abraham Accords. So really, they've changed the Middle East in a dramatic way in the past 4 years.
Are the Israelis concerned that this might lead to some kind of a war if the Biden administration takes over, that America will be so anti-Israel in those days?
I think they are, and I think they're especially concerned right now, Pat, about the nuclear deal, getting into what's called the JCPOA. And I think the top concern for Israelis, in fact, the top 3 concerns would be Iran, Iran, Iran. Across Israel's society and politics, they see Iran as the #1 threat. So the concern is, Pat, that the Biden administration will come and maybe even try to punish Israel and soften its approach to Iran and remove the maximum pressure of the Trump administration, re-enter the nuclear deal actually from a weakened position, because right now what Iran is saying is that they want to re-enter the deal, but they want reparations from the United States for the years of being sanctions under the Trump administration. So that would actually give wind to the sails of Iran right now, probably just at the wrong time.
Well, Chris, one more time that we look with horror at what may be happening to America in the Middle East. Thanks so much for being with us. Well, John, what you got next?
Well, Pat, in the United Kingdom, a major turning point in the battle against COVID-19. Today, British health authorities rolled out the first doses of a widely tested and independently reviewed vaccine. The first shot was given to Margaret Keenan, who turns 91 next week. She had some helpful advice for those worried about getting the shot.
Well, I would say go for it. Go for it because it's free and it's the best thing that's ever happened at the moment. So please go for it. That's all I say, you know. If I can do it, well, so can you, you know.
The first 800,000 doses of the vaccine produced by U.S. drug maker Pfizer and BioNTech of Germany are going to people over 80 who are either hospitalized or already have outpatient appointments scheduled, along with nursing homes. She looked great for 90, and she said that was the best early birthday gift.
That's great. Well, what do we got? So some other stuff in there. If you haven't scared people enough, you've got something really horrible.
Yeah, well, here we go with that. Up next, a new world order. The global elites are planning to radically change your way of life. Think this sounds like a conspiracy theory? Well, we've got news for you. Stay tuned for the Great Reset. Plus,
well, it sounds like a science fiction movie, but it's terrifyingly real. What is called the Great Reset is a plan to radically change our world. But one man stands in the way of this socialist nightmare. Who is that one man? Dale Hurd explains.
Here's a video of your future if some people at the World Economic Forum get their way. They say you'll own nothing and be happy about it. Energy will be green, rationed, and expensive, and travel will be restricted. Even your diet will be controlled, and currency will be digital. This left-wing dystopian dream is called the Great Reset, and you're supposed to be excited about it. The Great Reset has been labeled a conspiracy theory and even sounds like a conspiracy theory. But everything we know about it comes from the global elites themselves, who have been quite open about it.
This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a well-documented movement among many of the world's most powerful people.
Justin Haskins is a leading authority on the Great Reset.
Fundamentally, This is a radical and complete transformation of everything that we do in our society to control people's behaviors, to control businesses, and to move society in the direction that you want to move it. It will change the way businesses are evaluated. It'll coerce businesses to pursue left-wing causes.
The Great Reset was unveiled at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, where many of the world's most powerful people go to offer solutions to the world's problems. And the World Economic Forum sees the coronavirus pandemic as a historic opportunity to change the way the world operates.
Right now, we're facing a crisis of international proportion. It's going to have long-term impact for us.
Their solution is essentially global socialism. Think of the Green New Deal combined with the COVID-19 lockdown restrictions, and throw in something called the Fourth Industrial Revolution, in which technology is supposed to radically change the way we live and work. Klaus Schwab is the founder of the World Economic Forum.
What the Fourth Industrial Revolution will lead to is a fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities.
It has the support not only of world leaders, but of global corporations like MasterCard and BP, brought to you by people who think they know what's best for you.
By giving, the elites, the technocrats in society, the most educated people, the ability to manipulate society, pull the levers in society, and manage and manipulate society so that it's, in their minds, perfect.
But a Trump re-election would blow a massive hole in the Great Reset. 1 week before the election, Italian Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano wrote an open letter to the president, warning him that the Great Reset is inhuman, faceless tyranny that seeks to subdue all of humanity, and that President Trump and the United States are the wall against the deep state, the final assault of the children of darkness.
Over the past 4 years, Donald Trump has been the single greatest roadblock for people who are pushing this internationalist, globalist sort of agenda.
The elites at Davos are now counting on a Biden victory for their Great Reset to go forward. The World Economic Forum and the Biden campaign even share the same slogan, Build Back Better.
To build back better.
It's also a phrase you've heard being used by Justin Trudeau, by the Pope, by the Prince of Wales, and by leaders around the world.
English journalist and author James Delingpole.
You'd be amazed by how many world leaders are on board with this globalist plan, even people that claim to be conservative. This is worse than Nazism. This is worse than communism. This is worse than fascism. These guys are planning on taking over the whole world.
We'll hear more about the Great Reset when the World Economic Forum meets again in January. And whether he's in the White House or not, Donald Trump is expected to be a force, which could remain a problem for the hopeful backers of the Great Reset. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, that sounds like something out of the book of Revelation, doesn't it? You can't buy or sell without the mark of the beast. I mean, there it is. But, if you want to control people, you have one or two authorities to do it. And I think Satan has always wanted to have a very few elites who control everybody. And the will of the majority is always a good thing, but we don't have that. But those leaders at Davos, they're the big money people, the big corporate heads, the heads of government who meet. We used to talk about the Bilderbergers, and here you've got these others. And the question is, they're not hiding it. They're laying it out on the line, exactly what they have in mind. And, folks, you talk about having a need to pray. It's still God's world. That's the thing I like. It rests me in the thought, in rocks and hills. It's your world. This is my Father's world, and he's not going to give it over to the devil. I do not believe. Terry?
Well, still ahead on today's program, an unforgettable Christmas celebration from the world-famous Annie Moses Band. You don't want...
Welcome back to Washington for the CBN News Break. Chuck Yeager, the legendary test pilot and World War II fighter pilot ace, has died at the age of 97. Yeager made history in 1947 when he became the first person to fly faster than the speed of sound. He flew for more than 60 years and was awarded several military honors. Yeager was born in a small town in West Virginia. He once said, quote, "I was just a lucky kid who caught the right ride." Well, this Christmas season, many are struggling due to the pandemic. That's why one New Mexico tree lot decided to forego sales and to instead give away trees. The lot set up a donate what you can system, and for those who couldn't afford to give, they got a Christmas tree for free. The lot ran out of trees in just a few days, but not before it raised about $5,000 in donations. Well, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com. Pat and Terry will be back with more of the 700 Club right after this.